Here we are, another episode of Unfiltered Intuition. This episode I am really excited to shoot because a lot of my previous guests, they're people who I brought on who I already knew beforehand, and a lot of the information that I was going to learn about these guests wasn't exactly new to me, but that is not the case in this episode. I'm here with Ashraf and Hazim. Ashraf is someone who I just met today, so a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today are things that are completely new to me as well, so I am very excited to get this podcast on the road. I'm going to give both of these gentlemen a chance to introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Ashraf. Ashraf, give me a brief introduction about yourself, please.
My name is Ashraf Ramli. I'm 27, born and raised in Singapore. So I'm here for vacation actually. In the US, I flew to LA, then to Boston, to Detroit. It's been freezing, honestly.
Yeah, I know, that's Michigan for you. See, right. The thing is, being from Michigan, this is something we expect and we're kind of used to. You see me over here, not even a jacket, right. Something we gotten used to, but one of those things that is definitely part of the downside of Michigan is how torturous these winters can get. You said that you're only here for vacation. You're here to see Hazim and a couple of other friends here in Dearborn.
Right, exactly. I mean, it was a huge thing because I also went to school at Brandeis. So
where is that?
In Boston. Okay. So I was meeting my friends over there as well. Yeah.
That's nice. Hazim, give me a brief introduction about you. Hazim is not somebody who I just met today. Hazim I met through a mutual friend. I would say a number of years ago, probably a year, 2, 3 years ago. Yeah. Hazim, give me a brief introduction about yourself. Your name, your age, where you're from, what you're studying.
Hazim Al-Ghassan. I'm originally Palestinian. I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. I met Ashraf through a friend, Osama. Shout out to Osama.
Shout out Osama.
And I work in this startup company. I do accounting, bookkeeping, and all that.
Nice. You said you came to America in 2017?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was your first time in America, was in 2017?
No, I actually came here for a visit twice, actually. One in 2010 and one maybe 2013.
Nice. And you were here briefly. You didn't stay for school or anything?
No, briefly,
okay.
Just for a vacation.
Did you get to know people from here in Dearborn? Did you come to Dearborn during those years, or were you?
2010. My dad's friend. He's like an uncle to me.
Mm-hmm.
He's been living in Dearborn for like 25 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Interesting. You said you're 27. You're originally Falastini, but you were born in Saudi too?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Born and raised. Even my father was born and raised in Saudi.
In Saudi Arabia. Interesting. Well, I'm excited to get the show on the road with both of you guys. I know we're going to talk about a lot of very informational things, and like I said in the beginning, this is one of those episodes that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are going to be things that are absolutely new to me as well. So I'm very excited to get it on the road.
Interject, but this is the first time I'm able to travel within 2 years, and it's been something that I've been using to cope with
the pandemic. Or throughout college, I was traveling to cope with the difficulties I faced in university and stresses and stuff like that. But when the pandemic came, and at the same time I started my new job after graduation, it was annoying that I couldn't travel to relieve my stresses and stuff like that and meet people that I wanted to meet and have new experiences, and just got stuck in a small island I live in. That is part of that's a byproduct of the pandemic, because I feel like it forced people to become isolated and no longer be able to do a lot of the things that they used to do prior, which back to the point about a lack of stability. Basically what you're trying to say is things have become very unpredictable. You cannot predict what how the next 10 years is gonna unfold.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is good to have multiple backup plans. Funny thing is, I noticed that the camera wasn't recording the introduction part of the video, but that's not a big deal. Maybe we could mash it up
Sometimes, yeah.
With the audio. That's not a big deal though. Let me move on a little bit to, this is one of the very intriguing things about Ashraf that I was fascinated by as well. You told me that Arabic is not the primary language over there in Singapore, correct?
It's not. No one speaks Arabic in Singapore except Muslims who decide to pursue that sort of Islamic education route. And then I think the bulk of the people in the past who did Islamic education actually went to Azhar, the bulk of them, Azhar al-Sharif in Cairo. And I think increasingly now they're getting more diverse. They go to Jordan, they go to Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. But in general, people who are not within these circles do not know Arabic, have no knowledge of it whatsoever.
So where along your life did you begin to learn Arabic? Because I mean, I've come to find out that you speak Arabic very fluently.
Right. Okay. So I think my mom, I'm not sure if this is right to say, but she's an Asian mom, yani. So she's a tiger mom who wanted me to study hard, even as even as I was a toddler. So I think I learned how to read, write English, Malay, which is another language that I speak, in Arabic.
Say that one more time. Malay is an Arabic language?
No. English, Malay, and Arabic.
Okay.
The three languages that I speak. When I was 3, I think I could read and write all those 3 languages already.
By what age?
3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was reading the Quran. I was reading Malay text, English text, that kind of stuff. So when I went to kindergarten, it's more of a formality. I didn't actually learn much in school. So
how were you able by the age of 3 to know all 3 of these languages?
I didn't know them. I could. I could.
You said that so quickly as if it's absolutely normal.
Yeah.
Explain to me how you were able to like really, because there are 3 different languages. Arabic in and of itself is one of the hardest languages.
Yeah, the third.
So I learned how to read and write in it, but I didn't know how to speak it yet at 3 years old. Yeah, but I could read, write, and speak Malay and English at 3. So I think as time went by, during the Islamic education period of my life, I think we had to learn Fusha, as in the modern standard Arabic, in school, which is standard Arabic version that does not include all the different dialects that people actually speak in real life. So I think when I graduated from the Islamic school, it was not until I think college that I decided maybe, because I didn't want to waste this important skill that I have. Being able to speak Arabic is such a waste if you're not able to understand how people actually speak the language.
I'm sorry to cut you, but could you continue this answer in Arabic?
Yeah, let me hear a little bit of your Arabic. Continue, like Hazim said, continue the answer in Arabic.
sure. فساعتها أنا ما كنتش عايز يعني أخلي المهارات دي على الفاضي يعني. فعشان كده بدأت إن أنا أتعلم لهجات العربية المختلفة. عديت وقت شوية عشان أخد قرار يعني لهجة إيه بالضبط. عشان في كذا لهجات سهلة بالنسبة لي، بس اللهجة المصرية هي لهجة أكتر انتشارا في العالم العربي زي ما أنت عارف أكيد. وبعدين تعلمت من الأغاني والأفلام والمسلسلات. وفي الجامعة قضيت وقت طويل في بلدان عربية. رحت مصر، مغرب والسعودية والبحرين، وحتى بتركيا يعني تعاملت مع العرب كتير.
Give me that answer in English. Why out of all the Arabic dialects were you accustomed, and why did you choose it? Because that was Egyptian dialect, correct?
Right.
You did give me a little bit of that answer in Arabic, but why did you choose the Egyptian dialect to study and to, have that be the dialect that you speak? And what went into that decision of studying the Egyptian dialect and maybe not the Syrian or the Lebanese or, the Yemeni dialect? Is it because it's like the most commonly understood?
So as I said earlier, I was actually deciding among a few dialects, among it being Syrian, Egyptian, even Hijazi actually, because those 3 are kind of easy to understand in my perspective. After that, I decided on Egyptian because it was the most widely spoken, and I think I was watching a few shows at that point of time just to get the gears just sort of moving. And I realized that a lot of people, even the non-Egyptians, would code switch to Egyptian. They realized that, okay, perhaps that could be something that I could go into, because it seems that a lot of people, even outside Egypt, would speak it in different contexts depending on when it's needed.
Okay, what were you going to say?
That's funny, because sometimes when he doesn't understand the thing I say, just say it in Egyptian and he understands it.
And he understands it then?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
by learning the Egyptian dialect, like, did you have to go to strictly Egyptian schools, or is that like a change that came along the way? Because I heard in part of your answer in Arabic that by listening to some music and some movies, and is that how the dialect adjusted? Like, you had already known the Arabic language prior, like Arabi Fusha, the standard Arabic prior, and then you adjusted it into the Egyptian dialect? Is that what happened?
Yeah, it's sort of like acclimatization kind of process, right? Because you already know like Fusha, modern standard Arabic, so it just took some time and adjustment and getting used to how they pronounce things, how they say things, the phrasing, the grammar, etc. It's not that big of a
discrepancy
change. So I think I also traveled in Egypt quite a bit. That was like my first solo travel in my whole life in college. And I literally just couch surfed at random people's houses. I was studying in some random village near Mansoura. I was at Aswan, Oksur, somewhere near Sinai as well. Just random places, living with people, speaking with people, understanding how they say things, how they do things. It was interesting, honestly. Yeah, so I learned a lot. Honestly, but in addition to that, I also went to Morocco after that, through which I met Osama. And that was interesting because after I went to Morocco, I went to Turkey for summer school, and most of my classmates were Moroccans. So I sort of got used to Moroccan dialect as well. I can't speak it honestly, but I can understand most of it.
Yes. Is it that big of a difference between the Moroccan dialect and the Egyptian?
Oh, yes. I mean, like...
I always thought the Moroccans spoke a very different form of Arabic, because for me personally, it's very hard to understand.
Yeah, Hazim can attest to this, that most Arabs from the east of the Arab world wouldn't be able to understand the Moroccans well. Maybe to some extent, maybe when they speak it slowly, but not as how they would speak it on a daily basis.
But the funny part, they can understand us because of
they
the
can.
movies. Yeah, like Moroccan.
Because of media.
Yeah, that's the more commonly spoken form of Arabic in movies and whatnot.
Yeah. Right. But sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think because Moroccans, the thing is, there was some geographical disruption between the east and the west of the Arab world, and that's why the Arabic there sort of developed independently. I do want to address the fact that a lot of Arabs think that Moroccans and Algerians speak French. I mean, maybe more so for Algerians, but for Moroccans, they do have some French words. You know, like Egyptians have Turkish words, but it's basically Arabic. It's just the choice of words that they take from classical Arabic are different than the ones they do for Masri or Suri, Egyptian or Syrian, for instance.
So what you're trying to say is they actually incorporate some French words into Arabic and change it into like a Moroccan dialect of Arabic, but it's actually a French word?
Yeah, but I think my point exactly was the fact that they use borrowed words as much as other Arabs do, because, you know, Egyptians use Turkish, and then, for example, Iraqis probably use Persian words
depending
as
on who they were colonized by, right?
Exactly. So, but Moroccans, they do use a lot of Arabic words on a daily basis. It's Arabic, yani. But the thing about their Arabic is that because they migrated long time ago to all the way to the west, and there was kind of significant geographical distance between them and the east of the Arab world. So however they spoke in the 7th century, it sort of developed independently from how it did in Egypt and Hijaz and stuff like that. So that's why the classical Arabic words that they choose to use in their dialects are not the same words that, for instance, the Eastern Arabs would choose for their daily speech.
Okay. Yep. Hazim, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Tell me how you ended up over here in the United States. Tell me a little bit about what it's like, because I do know that you got your education over here and you were by yourself, away from your family, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that and some of the challenges that you faced having to go to a totally new country, you know, and just tell me a little bit about the challenges. Tell me about some of the things that you possibly liked being in a totally different country by yourself, studying education. Just tell me what life was like over here by yourself and a little bit about your upbringing as well.
So, my family believes that when you go study abroad, it's not only for better education, it's also for better experience.
We talked a little bit about that in the car.
So
for sure.
same thing like my father when he immigrated in the 80s. He went through this experience too. Maybe it was much difficult. So my parents want me to go through this too, to kind of feel what is it like to live alone, cook your own food, your expenses and everything. For me, it wasn't really difficult because I was blessed to come here for like visits once or twice. So I kind of
Prior to coming here for school?
Prior to coming here for school.
Okay.
Plus, I came to Dearborn because of the Arab community, and we had like some friends over here. So my dad didn't want me to feel kind of homesick. That's why I came to Dearborn. I was going to other states. I was going to Wisconsin. That's where my father initially lived. But like my dad told me, no, you gotta go in Dearborn first. You're not gonna feel homesick as much.
For sure. I can see why he would say that, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe later we would move somewhere else depending on your education or work. And I like it over here. Difficulties is that just people are just afraid to move out of their comfort zone. And till like my second or third year, I was still used to the way I lived in Saudi Arabia. And I had certain expectations for people over here to act like the people I was raised up with. You know, especially like there are Arabs too.
Yeah,
you know?
I get what you're saying, but you know, you're a product of your environment, and we were raised in a totally different environment than, you know, maybe what the environment was like in Saudi. Yeah.
And especially like Arabs here are more individualistic. Back home, it's just family oriented.
Communal,
yeah, communal.
Yeah.
So I didn't like really understand that at first. I was like, yeah, these people are supposed to call me over for dinner. These people are supposed to like call me every day, stuff like that. We are used to these stuff back home.
Back home.
Yeah.
No, 100%. But like I said, you know, we are products of our environment, and considering that we grew up here, you mentioned about how a lot of people seem to be individualistic, and that is the closest thing to the truth, because I feel like the environment that we're raised in over here is one that forces you to almost become that way. You're conditioned to do everything for yourself, when in reality, that's, you know, there's pros and cons to it. It's always good to sit there and focus on yourself first and foremost before you go out there and try to help others, but at the same time, there's nothing like that communal feeling of community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And belonging to.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something that is lacking over here, but I feel like in Dearborn, it's not as bad as anywhere else across the country.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Across Michigan too.
Or across Michigan as well, for sure.
And, I think I wanted to mention that made it kind of easier for me to like move here. I went to a school that had a lot of Arabs from different countries. So most of them, when they graduated, they went back to their countries or they studied abroad. So that was the normal thing back there. Like when I go back for visits now, most of the people that went to school with me are not there.
They're abroad also studying. Okay. Let's dive into Singapore. I'm telling you, when I started doing some research the other day, watching some videos, my mind was blown away. I really did not picture or imagine the country to be as modern and innovative as what I have come to see. I'm sure you guys have heard of Nas Daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually did a
His
video.
best friend.
Really?
Best friend.
He actually did a video on Singapore too. I liked the, you know, the different topics that he covered, and you know, he did talk a lot about their, you know, innovations and how modern they are, but towards the end of the video he did also mention, you know, a little bit of the downside and some of the cons to the country as well. And you know, there's an Arabic proverb that says بكل بيت حمام. So, you know, everywhere you go, nothing is perfect, whether that's a country, a city, or even a family, you know.
بس احنا الدول العربية كلها حمامات.
That's tough, but it's true. It's tough, but it's true, honestly. I mean, just look at the state of affairs back in our countries, you know. It's in the condition where people feel the need to flee their countries in order to find better opportunities elsewhere. You know, if it wasn't, like you said, the entire country a bathroom, people would find opportunities in their own countries and wouldn't feel the need to have to leave. But back to Singapore. Tell me a little bit about it, man. You said that you were born and you were raised over there. You know, I did come to find out that it's an island. I had no idea that it was an island. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, it's so small that to travel from one coast of the island all the way to the opposite coast of the island is a 1 hour drive. But even with it being that small, there is so much into the country. You know what I mean? You would think that it would not be as modern, progressive, and innovative as it is. So tell me a little bit about Singapore.
Right. So I think, okay, so just a little bit of context. Yep. So as you said, how small it is. I think because I live at the eastern side of Singapore, where the airport is as well, which is good because I like to travel. So if I forget my passport, it just
is it one international airport?
Yeah, just one international airport.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
The best airport in the world.
Yeah, I did hear.
Used to.
Not this year. It's
No,
the second or
Qatar.
third.
No,
Yeah.
Qatar is the best.
It used to be in the conversation for best airport in the world, though.
Yes. It was like for 13 years or something. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but anyways,
Blows my mind.
yeah, and my workplace is also kind of just 10 minutes away by public transportation, not by cars. So
And
that
that
kind
was a
of,
big thing over there. Sorry
Yeah,
to cut you
so-
off. Public
yeah.
transportation is huge.
yeah, so that kind of sets the context for this conversation a little bit because
Okay.
because of how small the country is, the state is able to implement a lot of policies quickly, decisively, and efficiently as well. Right. So, for instance, I think at the start of our history, the state decided to nationalize all lands, and they used it for public housing. So, public housing is not like in America where public housing is supposed to be for people who can't afford rent or mortgage, stuff like that. For us, public housing is for 80% of the population.
Wow.
Right. So everyone lives in public housing.
Explain to me the public housing a little bit. Like, is it completely free living, or is it affordable living, or?
It is not free, but it is subsidized. And the entity called Housing Development Board that manages public housing is a subsidiary of the state.
Okay.
So it is better because even though some of the houses could be quite expensive, for instance, I mean, it's not as expensive as here. Like 4-bedroom apartment, for instance, could be around $400,000. Yep, American dollars. So although it's expensive, they have like huge subsidies. For instance, if you're a family who buys the house, because they're encouraging families to live together, that kind of stuff. And they will have like lots of grants and stuff like that for you to be able to
Take advantage
afford
of
it. Yes, afford it better. And for instance, if you're not, you can't catch up on your mortgage payments because the entity that manages it is also part of the state. They're able to, maybe we can adjust the payments for if you provide some documents to us, for instance. Yeah, they wouldn't kick you out. Yeah, so that is something that. The social provisional part of the state that I sort of like, although I have some reservations about it, but I think it is the reason why we have been able to keep the homelessness rate quite low.
So low.
Yep. Yeah, and then on top of that, I think public transportation, as we talked about earlier, it's honestly quite good. The only thing that I dislike about public transportation in Singapore is that sometimes when I feel like the day is extremely hot, I just don't feel like taking public transportation, but that's not a public transportation problem. That is like a climate problem. Yeah, but anyways, you can almost go anywhere using public transportation, and the metro train, for instance, comes every 2 or 3 minutes. So I was shocked that, or even buses comes every 2 or 3 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, so when
Round the clock?
Yes, I mean like it's not 24 hours.
Yeah, but whole business day, for example.
Correct, for 12 hours, something like that. Yeah, so it was weird because when I first came to America, I wanted to take the bus in Boston, and I missed one, and then I checked the next one, it's like 37 minutes. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, it is quite the difference, honestly. And public transportation maybe is a lot more used in Boston, but over here in Dearborn,
I used it once. No, actually, I used to go on buses a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't have a car back then. The insurance rate over here is
It's
crazy.
ridiculous.
Yeah, so I used these buses for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
To get to and from school or to and from work?
To Warren, to eat some shawarma or something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Interesting.
That is very interesting because over here growing up, we used public transportation one time. In 8th grade, we graduated 8th grade, and we didn't have anybody to give us a ride to the mall to go watch a movie.
Oh.
So we got onto a bus from Dearborn all the way to the other side of Dearborn. That was the only time I ever got on a bus growing up. That's why I thought that it really wasn't used as much over here.
I lived next to the mall, so I used to take buses from there to Greenfield, Warren.
Yeah, the mall has a stop where it takes you to like all over the city.
They expanded that now.
Really?
It takes you maybe up to, I don't know, Royal Oak maybe?
Interesting. MDOT.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Interesting.
My next question was going to be about something that we kind of touched base on, but I was going to ask you, is the country diverse? We did talk a little bit about how diverse it is, but like, for example, over here in America, yes, we are also diverse, but I feel like because of the diversity, we're also kind of polarized. And there's a lot of subliminal animosity between different races and religions, possibly. That's not something that I noticed over there in Singapore. I might be mistaken, but I noticed although that it's very diverse, there's not much animosity and, it's not very polarized. People seem to be able to get along. So tell me a little bit about how the diversity is over there and if there's any forms of conflict, or does everybody just seem to get along with one another?
Okay, so I mean, this is a topic full of controversies, honestly, because it's not how it seems in Singapore. It's not just peaceful and harmonious. It could seem that way to other people because
from the outside looking in.
Yes, because the state maintains order and harmony, and it's created. It's not like natural, right? So
explain that to me. Created. It's not natural.
Okay, so in the 1960s, before Singapore got its independence, in quotation marks, in case you can't see it,
from Britain.
Not really. It was from Malaysia actually, because
Really?
Yeah, because we got independence from Britain in 1959, and then we joined Malaysia in 1963, and then we left in 1965.
Why'd you put independence in quotations? Because you feel like it's still not?
No, because independence from Malaysia doesn't actually make sense, because it was just Malaysia kicking us out, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyways, I think because of politicians stoking racial sentiments across different political parties and stuff like that, people were actually fighting. People were carrying axes. And
how long ago was this?
It was in 1964, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there was one incident that's related to in elections, perhaps, but the other one was because a Dutch woman gave her baby to a Muslim Malay family, and then she left, and then she came back after that girl is like 12, I think, and then she wanted the baby back, but then this Malay lady didn't want to give it up, right? So it was a court case, and the Malays were angry that the custody was given back to the Dutch family, and it was a bit controversial because after she was given back,
this led to political unrest.
Yeah, she was seen in the Netherlands with in the church and stuff like that. It angered the Muslims because she was brought up.
The baby as a Muslim.
She was brought up a Muslim. So I think that also caused some racial rioting. But I think after independence from Malaysia again, a lot of them, the state actually started to implement like no tolerance of any sort of racist or racially charged discourses in public. So no one could say that, and if you were to say anything racist at all, you'll be arrested. So
oh wow.
Yes, so that's why it's.
So there's no real freedom of speech over there.
There isn't. Yes. And this will lead to something else later, but the point is because of that, there was a creation of this multicultural, multiracial harmony.
So it's literally a system that they implemented?
Yeah, so it's somewhat superficial. And in another context that this applies to is actually housing as well, because, so the racial composition of Singapore is 70% Chinese, approximately, 15% Malays, and 8% South Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, etc. So in public housing, it works that way as well. So within an apartment block, it needs to be 70% Chinese, 15% Malays, and 8% Indians, so there wouldn't be ghettos. As in, that was what they wanted, they envisioned for us. So it creates a lot of problems for minorities to buy houses, because if the quota has already been filled in this apartment block, they can't get it anymore, even though they particularly like the apartment that they
just because there's already, for example, I'm Indian and there's already enough Indians in that building, they're not going to allow you to move in.
Exactly. I mean, it's not that simple, because the quota is by neighborhood and stuff like that, but basically it's like that, similar.
So that's what Naz meant when he said that they force these people to become neighbors.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So now they're even taking it to a larger extent, because in the past, the poor people tend to live in smaller rental apartments, they call it, because like other people just purchase their houses and pay their mortgage throughout their lives, but these people just rent from the government at a very cheap rate, right? So in the past, these rental apartments are separate from the purchase apartments, but now they're trying to build new apartments that they actually combine both of them together, and apartments of different sizes and different prices, so people actually are forced to integrate and interact with each other rather than being separate.
Basically, what you were trying to tell me about them having those regulations about not being able to speak anything in regards to race and whatnot. So, is what you're trying to tell me that people are coexisting with one another because of the laws that exist, and not because of the fact that people actually learn to, get along?
Exactly. So, I mean, because people had a lot of racially charged sentiments, not just because of 1964, but, people being people. And then in the past, because the Chinese came into Singapore and then the Malays had some feelings about it, that sort of stuff. But I think it was interesting, because I was learning in college a few years ago, and there was this sort of discursive analysis of what Singaporeans think of multiracial harmony. And it is surprisingly exclusionary of people who are not traditionally included in what is supposed to be multiracial harmony, because the government has defined it as Chinese, Malays, Indians, and others. And others are also specified as, Arabs and Pakistanis and Eurasians. It's specified as well. So
they're just thrown as under the category of others, though.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's also specified others. Like any other people who are new, for instance, people from, Morocco who came to Singapore, they wouldn't fit into this model of multiracial harmony. And what makes it even more interesting is that the Chinese and the Indians in Singapore, for instance, they like to distance themselves from the Chinese from China or the Indians from India. They don't like it. They say that we're Singaporean Chinese. We're not China Chinese. Yes.
Hazim, question for you real quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
He mentioned something yesterday about the emigration of Chinese people to Singapore, and that the government let in 1 million Chinese immigrants to kind of make up for the
lack of Chinese people in Singapore?
No, because the
right. Okay, so this is
fertility rate. You said
yeah.
Like
so
that?
This is a controversial issue, because I think in the past, when Singapore got independent, the Chinese were the majority because of colonialism and how the Chinese came to Singapore, it being a trade center of the region. But across the years of Singapore, after it being independent, there was an issue of the Malays significantly having higher fertility rate than the rest.
Okay.
So they actually had this. There was a lot of eugenicist policies. Honestly,
explain what eugenicist means.
So it's that sort of thinking that certain people have better DNA than the rest. So like actively engineering society to look in a certain way, right? So for instance, they had this policy that's called "Stop at 2" policy. So like you should only have 2 children. I think beyond that, it was a fine. I think something like that. And
this is in Singapore.
In Singapore, yes. So there was
in mainland China. They're not allowing him to.
Yeah, but they had a different concern than we did, though, because we also had another policy that was fiercely rejected by the people, but it was called graduate mothers policy. So I mean, as it sounds, mothers or like women who actually graduated from university would be rewarded handsomely if they had children.
Oh, wow.
So they really wanted, they believe that smart people will beget smart children, even though that's not exactly true.
A DNA thing, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nurture and nature question. No one knows for sure what is the answer, but they're just assuming that one is the truth, which is nature determines everything. Right. So I think recently, if you look at the demographic data of Singapore, it's all available online, by the way. I think Chinese, there's a huge influx of Chinese people from Malaysia, mostly from Malaysia, but some from China as well, to sort of balance the fact that Malays are having lots of babies. So...
is it a concern of overpopulation?
It's a concern of racial balance. Yes. So, the sort of ideas, it's really weird because, like, why do you want to have that? Why is it important, right? Their argument is because of racial harmony, but what kind of harmony? There's just more questions than answers.
Hazim, there's a question for you. You've been in America long enough to know that there are a lot of racially motivated crimes that occur here. There's a lot of hate speech, a lot of racially, religiously motivated hate speech that occurs over here as well. We know that, especially after 9/11, it still occurs till today, that a lot of Muslims faced a lot of wrongful treatment just because of the fact that supposedly, it was Muslims who were responsible for the attack. What I'm trying to get to is, do you think that a law like that they have in Singapore, where racially motivated hate speech or racially motivated talk is illegal, do you think that something like that over here would have been useful in preventing a lot of those things from happening? Like a lot of the hate crimes that occur against Muslims, or for example, maybe even, a lot of these racially motivated people who divide us, do you think that implementing a law like that over here in the United States would have alleviated a lot of the issues that occurred, whether it's post 9/11 or whether it's issues that we still see today?
I think not all of the rules or the policies he mentioned. For example, that 1 million Chinese thing does not work here. You can't bring in immigrants just to
kind of balance
it with the white people. Actually, that would cause more trouble and problems than
they think it would.
Than not doing that. I think it's very different also here because the U.S. is almost a continent. The USA is just a continent, so you can't just do that. Maybe in some cities, yeah. But also, I think in the U.S., it's kind of everything is low-key. Maybe there are some stuff like that. Maybe there is a long-term plan for doing something. You never know. So I don't think everything that they apply in Singapore works here. Okay. But yeah, I believe some stuff should be applied. Saying racial slurs, maybe forcing a lot of people to move around, this policies of the ghettos thing, the building that you have to be 70% Chinese, 30%.
Diversifying.
Maybe, diversifying neighborhoods. Maybe I think that's a good thing, because I don't know. You notice that over here,
very Detroit, gentrified.
Every mile is different. If you go from 8 mile to 9 mile, it's totally different. 8 mile to 7 mile is
totally
another
different.
thing. So I think some of these may work here, but in general, no, I don't think that's the case in the United States.
Interesting. We have come to implement a lot of laws against racially motivated, hateful speech. So I think that already is a thing where it's a federal law. That's why they call them hate crimes. You can actually be charged for racially motivated hate crimes. I kind of was fond of that idea, to be honest with you. Although, it might be categorized as by certain people that, they're preventing you from having free speech. It's that kind of speech is not accepted anywhere. It causes issues and it has a potential to cause crimes. And that's why I feel like it would be a great idea to implement certain laws like that. Although it does infringe on your freedom of speech a little bit, it prevents a lot of issues from occurring. So I was actually kind of fond of that idea, the fact that they have that law implemented. The next topic, we kind of touched base on it too as well. I wanted you to tell me a little bit about what the political atmosphere is like over there in Singapore. So tell me, is it like a democracy? Do you guys hold elections? where you have elected officials, or does it fall more under the umbrella of like a monarchy? What's the political atmosphere like over there?
Okay, so I think we inherited the British system. So it's a parliamentary democracy. By name, Yani. It's not like it's lip service, I would say. Although there are elections that happen every 4 to 5 years, and people are. The thing is, the same ruling party has been ruling Singapore since independence till now, right?
Oh, really?
Yes. So there have been ebbs and flows. Like they have, their supermajority is reduced like by 5 to 6% or even 10% recently. But they're still ruling, and so there were some wins recently by the opposition parties, like they won another constituency, for instance. But the ruling party still holds a supermajority, and although they don't infringe on people's rights to run for office, for instance, there was a lot of intimidation of opposition parties and opposition members throughout Singapore's history. A lot of them were sued to bankruptcy, for instance.
Wow.
Yes, for stuff that are
very
honestly,
minuscule,
yes,
nothing
inconsequential, and sometimes, I wouldn't say whom, but it hurts. Yeah, it hurts some people's ego, and that's why they were just sued to bankruptcy. Yes.
So, is it kind of like over here we have 3 branches of government? And there's a form of checks and balances, or is it like the prime minister calls all the shots?
Right. Okay. So there are 3 branches of government. It's not exactly like America. It's more like Britain, actually. So we have a president because it's a republic. The president's actually elected. The president wasn't elected in the past. The president was elected by the parliament. But I think in 1980s or something like that, they started to have directly elected presidents. And so every 5 years, we elect our president. Recently, I think maybe 3 or 4 years back, we actually changed the presidency system to ensure that minorities are elected as presidents as well. So in some years, only minorities can run for president, something like that. Yeah, so this one, the current president that we have was based on that system, because like Chinese presidents have been ruling on for too long, and then they decided that, this year it's only Malay candidates that could run for office.
Really?
Yep. But and then we have the parliament, which is, it's like Congress in America as well. So they're directly elected by the people as well. This is the most significant part of the Singapore government, because they create laws. They're a legislative branch. They create laws. The prime minister has strong executive powers as well, although the president is supposed to hold executive powers. So the president is mostly assents to things or consents to things, depending on what you're talking about. Yeah, so the president doesn't really do, introduce policies, for instance.
He just signs off on them.
Yeah, she just kind of consents to whatever the parliament does. And if she doesn't agree, which rarely happens, she could sort of voice out her opinion. Yep.
Quick question. So, the political atmosphere over there, is there anything like how polarized the political atmosphere is over here in America? I'm not sure if you're too familiar, but I really feel like the political atmosphere here in America is very polarized. You have the left wing, you have the right wing. You're either a Democrat, you're either a Republican, and people on both sides of the aisle have very conflicting views than the person on the other side of the aisle has. So basically what I'm trying to say, is it as polarized as it is over here, or is there more of a general consensus in the way things, the trajectory of policies and whatnot, and there's not much of a opposition to, for example, like over here, how Democrat, Republican, left, right, I feel like the political atmosphere in America, especially today, has become very polarized. Is it anything like that over there in Singapore?
I need to set some historical background to this, because I think in the past, since the 1950s, actually since the days of the British, there were a lot of clamping down on political speech from the people. So if the people had some ideas on policies and they were against the government, there was people were persecuted, people were detained without trial, stuff like that. So in general, Singaporeans do not
speak up against the government.
Speak up openly until the advent of social media, right? So when social media and the anonymity that is afforded to Singaporeans to just speak up on issues that they care about without being identified in public. I think that has sort of opened a new platform for Singaporeans and a new space that they're actually bringing up new things that had not been discussed for decades. So that's quite an interesting development, I thought. But in general, I mean, recently, because a lot of American discourses have been imported in Singapore as well. I mean, I haven't said this, but Singapore being an English-speaking country and a country that's very adjacent to America in a lot of its foreign policies, I was raised in like mostly American culture, because American movies, American films, American brands, etc., etc. So we grew up with that. So and when you have, you know, the public education system having such a strong connection to like American education system, because a lot of, especially the higher socioeconomic class, they would study in the U.S. A lot of our ministers would study in Harvard, for instance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep, and because, you know, I was choosing my study abroad program, and, you know, Asian exchange universities fill up probably half a page, and then American universities are like 3.5 pages.
So they rely heavily on a lot of...
Yes, exactly. So we brought back these ideas, and I think recently there was a controversy of someone doing blackface.
In Singapore?
Yes, so it was a public initiative that went wrong, that sort of thing, because they wanted someone to do electronic payment. They wanted to promote electronic payment to people, especially the older generation, and they wanted to portray like 3 different ethnicities, and then for the yes, and then they literally had the Chinese guy putting on exactly to portray like Indian people. Yeah, so a lot of people were angry, and they were saying that, oh, Chinese people are racist. I mean, not all Chinese people, of course, you know, some of them.
But based off that event, that's the conclusion that they came to.
So it blew up, right? It blew up, and then, you know, believe it or not, the one that was actually punished was not the guy who did the blackface, but was one of the people who actually criticized this blackface in public.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's why this law of like criticizing, persecuting racially charged discourses, it's a double-edged sword, honestly. Yeah, if the government can use it for you or against you. Yep.
So do you think that puts a lot of citizens in a position where they're discouraged to speak out about maybe some controversial things because they're afraid of the persecution that might follow, and they choose to just keep it to themselves?
Right. So I think there's a term in Singapore studies that's called out-of-bound markers. So these are topics that are not talked about in public, among which is race. So I think, a lot of people have been criticizing this because the reason why Singapore recently has had a lot of problems suddenly surfacing out of nowhere is because no one talked about it before, but they were still harboring these feelings, these sentiments within them, right? So they're hidden, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. Right? So some people are arguing that perhaps if they were out there, it's better because we could learn how to address them, right? But because it's not out there, no one knew it existed.
And they don't know how to address them.
Yes, exactly.
My question for you, do you think it is similar over here? Do you have something like that over here?
In the sense of where...
Like being afraid to talk or something to be...
Honestly, I don't really think so. Maybe in certain aspects because of the fact that the topic is maybe so taboo, but not because of the fact that you're afraid of persecution from your government. It's one of our rights, that freedom of speech. Some people take it to an extremely far level to where it's counterproductive. But I think that is not an issue over here. A lot of people address a number of different things that are, whether they're controversial or they're not. They really give the citizens the liberty to address any topic they like, whether it's race or any of the other things that are not allowed to be discussed over there. But to elaborate on that point, I was going to ask you, do you think that that's part of the reason as to why the country has been so economically successful? You know, or because I can't help but think that because these things are not allowed to be a part of the conversation, that it strictly forces them to focus on, you know, strengthening the economy. And do you think that because these other issues are prevalent and aren't discussed in government as much as they are over here, they're able to focus more on the economy, and that's part of the reason as to why it's thriving so much? Or do you think it has nothing to do with it?
Right. So there's this term in, I'm not sure if it's political science or sociology, but it's in social sciences in general. Mm-hmm. But they call, a lot of scholars actually call Singapore a benevolent dictatorship. Right. So we're a dictatorship, but we're nice, sort of. Right. I don't agree with that, but it's what it's used in mainstream academia to describe Singapore. Because on the one hand, you have that policies to prevent racially charged discourses. But on the other hand, also economic policies are sort of rammed through parliament without a lot of deliberation, discussion, and it got things going, right? Mm. On the other hand, I mean, I disagree with this, but of course, some people argue that, you know, they were clamping down on unions, they were clamping down on strikes, for instance, they jailed all of them. So just workplaces just kept going. There was no disruption that you would see recently in America, for example. So, for example, with Kellogg, with the huge strike all over the country, for instance. I mean, personally, I think that's a good thing. But in terms of the mainstream in Singapore, and also the state sees that as a good thing because we don't have disruptions. Everything just kept going on and moving. Yep.
That was part. You literally answered it. It's that disruptions that there's, you know, it avoids any disruptions in the process of strengthening the economy. So I feel like it does work in their favor in that regard. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good thing, you know. So maybe now that you are where you want to be economically, maybe it's time to start addressing a number of different things that, you know, the residents are concerned about, especially considering that you've now, you know, perfected the economy, at least from what I've come to see. Let's move on. So there's one thing that I seen in my research that really blew my mind. Tell me a little bit about how fresh water and drinking water is created. It might not be the main method of creating fresh drinking water, but it's probably it's up there. It's definitely a method of creating drinking and fresh water. Elaborate on that. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. Exactly. So I think as most of the things that I've discussed so far, we need to go back a little bit because I think Singapore got most of its fresh water from Malaysia. I think they still do now, but they're in the process of transitioning. So when I think there was some agreement that was facilitated by the British that this huge lake or reservoir in Malaysia was reserved for Singapore's use till today, right? So when it rains and stuff like that, the water supply sort of increases, and that's where most of the fresh water comes from. But because of some disagreements with Malaysia and Singapore's government, I think especially in the Asian financial crisis in the 90s, I'm not sure if you know who Mahathir Mohamad is, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, right? Back then, he was like, you know, we're all suffering, but why is Singapore only paying 3 cents a gallon for our water? To them, it's their water because it's in their land, right? Yeah, but it's technically Singapore's land because we purchased it. There was a contract and everything. Yeah, so and I think he was alluding to the fact that they might increase it or something. And also this contract ends, I think, in 2061 or something. I don't know. There's like two different years that they're going to end. So Singapore's just going to stop getting water from Malaysia. So because of those things, I think the government decided that we need to source out for other ways,
methods
of getting water. And I think one of them was actually to use this reverse osmosis sort of technology and use, I mean, forgive me for saying this, but like sewage water or like recycled water. Yeah,
Bill Gates actually brought up that method over here in the United States as well. I was fascinated by it. These are some of the technological advancements that I think about when I think about the advancements that are in Singapore. I noticed that they're a very technologically advanced country as well. So, to be able to transform sewage water into fresh drinking water is beyond me, because there is a water shortage around the world, not just here, of fresh drinking water. So to be able to have advancements like those where you're able to, transform sewage water into fresh drinking water, that's I feel like an amazing advancement that, is inevitable, especially considering the way things are heading.
They say like in the next maybe 50 years, wars would start based on this water shortage, especially in the Middle East.
That goes to show you how serious it is. And I know that in Yemen, that is currently an issue today, where they do have a major water shortage. So, like I said, just to reiterate, the fact that they're able to have advancements like those just goes to show you how advanced the country is. And like I said, prior to doing some research about Singapore, I had a big misconception in my mind, thinking that it was a barely developed country. I did not know that it had all this infrastructure and all this technological advancements. And to bring up some of the advancements, I also realized that they are heavy on technological education as well, and implementing it into the school system. I actually seen something in the nature of, they have robotics classes for children as young as kindergarten, first grade. And I feel like these forms of education are something that we're lacking here in the United States. So tell me a little bit about the education system over there. I know you mentioned to me a little bit about the format of the education, but tell me about the curriculum itself. Is it similar to our system over here? I don't say higher education. I'm talking about like grade school, high school.
Right.
I was very fascinated to find out that, like I said, they teach robotics as early as kindergarten, first grade. And I feel like these are skills that are real life skills, especially the way that the world is heading in today, such a technologically driven world. To be able to implement that type of education to children as young as 3-4 years old is an advantage, and it's something that I feel like is something that we need to implement here in the United States as well. We've had the same curriculum for, is it safe to say centuries? I know decades. So tell me a little bit about the curriculum over there. Is it more of a hands-on type of thing, or is it like how it is over here in the United States? Because I'll tell you, over here there's a lot of standardized exams. There's a lot of like, it's not very hands-on, so to speak. I think they're just trying to do that now with more electives and this and that, but they don't really teach you much real life skills in grade school. As soon as you get out of high school, you're 18 years old, you're thrown out to the real world. You have no real financial literacy. You have no real life skills that you were able to attain throughout that grade school. So tell me, is the curriculum over there in Singapore a little bit different? Did they teach you a little bit more hands-on skills, real life skills, or is it similar to our education system over here?
Okay, so just a little bit of background on how it works is that we go through 3 years of preschool and then 6 years of what they call primary school.
Which should be considered middle school for us, maybe?
Not really, because primary school is like 7 years old till 12.
Yeah.
Elementary.
Yep. And at the end of primary school, there is this standardized national exams that you take. And it sort of determines which secondary school, which is the next level, that you could go to, because it's all like tiered and which one is better than the next, that sort of thing. And secondary school is 4 years. It culminates in this in this exams as well. So it's very exam heavy, as you can see. And the exam is actually administered by Cambridge University in the UK.
Wow.
Right. So for instance, there's ordinary level. There's N level. I'm not sure what N is, honestly, because I didn't take it. But ordinary level is administered by Cambridge, and all the subjects, basically, after you do the exams, they'll send the papers to the UK, and then the UK will just send back the grades to us, right? So after that, it's 2 years of high school. I mean, we call it junior college, but It's 2 years of high school, and it culminates also.
Those 2 years are what age would you be at?
17 and 18.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to cut you. That thing you talked about, what is it? Is it the same as the O level?
Yes, O levels. Ordinary levels.
Back in Saudi Arabia, we had something like that, where after the 9th grade, you would choose to go to the British curriculum or the American curriculum. So I'm kind of familiar with
what was that based off of? Like, is it also based off of how you do on that standardized exam, or is it based off of choice?
I think it's choice mainly, yeah. So, and it depends on where you're going after school. So I wanted to come here, so I just
chose the American curriculum.
Some people wanted to go to Jordan or Egypt, and they, I think, ask for these exams, or it's better for their admission.
To take the British.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with the O level, A levels.
Yeah. So I took the A levels as well at the end of high school, and that's also administered by the Cambridge University. So I think we're also very exam heavy and a lot on standardized testing. But I think what is emphasized throughout the education system is really mastery of reading, science, and math. Like really mastery of it, because although we're not taught like financial literacy or whatever, but I think countless international rankings have put Singapore students at the top in terms of their math skills, English skills in terms of literacy, and science skills, which bugs me a little bit, because if we're highest in literacy in English, why do English-speaking countries still require of us to take English testing when we go to their universities? Right, because we read English better than they do. But anyways, that aside, I think it was interesting because I think just a couple of weeks back, or maybe a month back, there was, I don't watch this show, by the way, it was just a snippet of it. I think it was Sandra Bullock with Kelly Clarkson in the Kelly Clarkson show. So I think Kelly Clarkson was asking Sandra Bullock about whether she helps her daughter or her son, I think, with their homework because of the pandemic and stuff like that, and her having to be more involved in their education. And then she's like, oh, now they're doing this new thing called Singapore math, and I don't understand anything about it. Then it just brings back all the trauma of having to go through that back in school. Because, I mean, we were big on mathematical modeling when in primary school, and when we were very young to understand how proportion works, ratio, percentages. I think that's like the foundation of arithmetics. So, and algebra as well. So I think that's why Singapore is so successful at producing people, especially in STEM, but also in the social sciences and humanities as well, because our people around the world, like performing in various universities abroad, they're not performing in our own country for some reason, because we have a very competitive system. As in my university, for instance, everything is curved. Like if everyone does well, you will not do well. That sort of thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I was surprised when I came here at Brandeis, and it's like, oh, there's no curve. It's so easy to get an A. So,
yep. Are you the reason why they are a lot more advanced in these subjects? Do you feel like it's because school's a lot more strict over there, like in regards to your elementary days, your middle school days? Why is it that that the country makes some of the most smartest people, you said, outside the country? They don't really they don't really contribute much within their own country, but why is it that it is that way? Like I guess what I'm trying to say is,
like, how does that happen?
Why does that happen?
Right.
Is it because of the strictness? Like, growing up in what we would call elementary school, was it gruesome, tiring work where they actually like really challenged your mind and your brain and forced you to comprehend these concepts that are maybe things that we don't learn until high school?
Okay, I'm gonna go to that in a little bit, but Singapore does put a lot into education. The funding is huge. It's I mean, unfortunately, the biggest is still the military, but the second is, I think, education, 4 years. So the teachers are paid really well. They don't need to use your own pocket money for stationery, for instance.
Wow.
And I think that's what I heard from like American teachers.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so, and they have really good
tax deduction.
Yeah, they have really good job security in teaching. I think every few years they would just give them a lump sum of money just to make them stay in the industry, right? So I think that's part of it. The schools,
that's exactly the answer to my
yeah,
question.
the
really.
schools are really well funded. I think so I can't comment on that on the elementary school part because I was in a private Islamic school that was underfunded, right? That's another issue altogether. I wrote a whole dissertation about it in undergrad, but basically mainstream schools are really well funded. I went to a public high school, and I was surprised because it was a transition between Islamic school and public high school. I was surprised by how well prepared the teachers were, how they basically enlightened me on everything I didn't know about. Because I think I didn't take calculus in secondary school, so I went to high school having to catch up with others. But my teacher was really helpful, and I could understand everything by the end of 2 years. Yeah, so I think it's just honestly, out of all the things that I criticize about Singapore, the education system is pretty great, honestly.
That was the exact answer to my question. You know, the fact of how you brought up that teachers are very well taken care of. I feel like that's an issue that we have here in America is teachers are not incentivized and compensated as much as they should be. Considering that they're basically responsible for raising the next generation to become these productive, serving members of society. And they have such a heavy burden and a role and a responsibility that these teachers and educators need to be put in the category of your highest paying grade, engineers, doctors, lawyers. But that's not the fact of the matter over here. Teachers are quitting in historic numbers.
I think it's everywhere, not just here.
In the United States?
Yeah, like back like in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Had a lot of teachers doing strikes and stuff.
But considering that this is the most modern, progressive country in the world, you would think that, you know, they would implement these things over here, knowing the importance of education, you know? So that's one thing as a teacher that I've also come to notice myself is that teachers are not compensated, incentivized, and treated as well as they should be in society. Like Hazim said, I firmly believe that they should be in the pay grade of doctors, lawyers, and engineers. They should be extremely highly respected. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And, you know, we're beginning to see the consequences of that, whether it's, like I said, teachers leaving in historical numbers. And you really see it in the lack of quality in the children's education these days. You know, some schools and districts are still better off than others, but the ones that don't have the same amount of funding that other districts have, like let's say for instance, schools in Detroit possibly, I can only imagine. You know, I taught over there, and the difference between the infrastructure of the schools here in Dearborn to the ones over there in Detroit is ridiculous. You know, so poorly managed. You really feel like there's not that sense of school culture. You know, that's something that growing up in school I heavily relied on, the atmosphere that I was learning in. You know, it really determined how well you were able to learn. And when that atmosphere isn't there for you and the teachers are demoralized, it's almost impossible to really learn. You know what I mean? So that's one of the issues over here that I've noticed in our education system throughout the years. And I'm glad that you mentioned how well compensated and incentivized teachers are over there, because that goes to show you the tangible differences. You know, they breed a lot more well-educated individuals, you know, in their basic school systems than we do over here. I might be mistaken, but that's the observation that I've come to make over the years. But we did talk a little bit about how small the country is in the beginning of the podcast. So that leads on to my next question. You know, throughout my research and the videos that I've watched, although the country is so small, there's a big portion of it that's very modern, industrialized, amazing infrastructure. These buildings are like some of the best buildings you will ever see. but yet they're still able to preserve Mother Nature as well. They're still a very natural, part of the country. It's not a concrete jungle, so to speak. What do you think allowed a country that small to be able to play both roles and preserve both things? Be able to modernize, but at the same time still preserve Mother Nature as well?
Honestly, I'm not sure the philosophy behind it, but I think the pioneering leaders in our country wanted to have, I think they call it the Garden City. So that's their vision.
You got a Garden City too.
Yeah, but it's just not a Garden City. It's called Garden City.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so they're big on planting trees by the roads and stuff like that, and maintaining it as well. And because it's a tropical country, that sort of thing is not that hard to do, honestly. But
by default, already
yes,
that way.
but the thing is, they also ensure that parks are a huge thing in every single neighborhood. Yeah, so it's not just within a certain more higher end neighborhoods, for instance, but everyone will have access to parks. It sounds a bit like Parks and Recreation, the sitcom, but the point is, they also have like a lot of nature reserves, and the park that's close to my house, there are 2 parks that's close to my place, but the thing is, there's another park that's slightly further, maybe like 15 minutes walk, something like that. There's actually a wetland reserve, I'm not sure, mangrove, yes, that's what you call it in English. So it's basically a place by the sea that's actually more muddy, and a lot of organisms actually live there, which actually, recently we've been seeing a lot of the organisms that disappeared because of urbanization reappeared because of these reserves. We have recently seen more otters, snakes, which is not, I'm afraid of snakes, and there are crocodiles now as well, which is like honestly Florida. A bit...
Wow.
A bit...
that's something you would expect. It's an island,
right.
So...
Yeah. Right, so the park is just full of animals. I think there's even one Netflix documentary or YouTube, I think, that sort of documents the wildlife that exists in Singapore, and even some of the animals actually do not exist anywhere else because of how rich the biome is, biodiversity within Singapore. Yep. So I think this park called Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, which allows pedestrians, but it is mostly protected, right? So a lot of, I think there's sort of some native dragonfly that we have, but I generally do not like to go to those places because it's scary. And honestly, we have a mosquito problem in our country, as it is in most tropical countries as well, because we're always wet, right? And water bodies sort of, become stagnant, and then the mosquitoes just start to breed, and it causes disease. Honestly, more people died of mosquito-related diseases last year than COVID.
Oh, wow.
In Singapore. Yep. Yeah. Having said that, there were a lot of people who died from COVID in Singapore in the first place, right? So it annoys me, especially if there's even one that came into my house, then I would be just chasing
paranoid about it.
This is a problem in Africa.
Chasing it around.
Mosquito issue.
Yeah. But we do have.
And you can see how it can transmit diseases, obviously, considering this.
Correct. But the state does go around fogging. I'm not sure if this is the same word for in American English, but they would use huge insecticide machine gun sort of thing.
It's like a pesticide.
Yes, exactly. So they would just start blasting the neighborhoods, and it will be scheduled maybe like fortnightly, every 2 weeks, or even every month, in every neighborhood, so that it remains mosquito free. But of course, sometimes it just happens, but most of the time it doesn't exist within living spaces. Yeah.
Another funny thing that I wanted to touch base on that I was able to discover through, watching videos and doing a little bit of research. I come to find out that gum is illegal in Singapore.
That's like
help me understand. They never told me the reason why it was. So help me understand why gum is... Before you tell me why, I can give you my theory as to why I think it's illegal. Is it an issue with littering and them being afraid of having gum on the concrete and on buildings and effect of, like I said, littering?
Right. So the mainstream narrative at that point of time was that people who chewed gum would litter not just on the streets, but also like on train seats, for instance.
Yes, okay.
And on train tracks as well, which caused some disruption, right? So it took, they had some number, I think, of like how much they would have to pay almost on a yearly basis because just to clean these places.
And therefore they thought it was a better idea to just make it illegal.
Right.
It's a funny thing that whenever whenever somebody knows he's from Singapore, they always ask him this question. It's like
sorry, it's probably repetitive.
Yeah, I think Singapore just bans a lot of things in general just because they could. There's one YouTuber who created this travel blog thingy. It's not a travel blog, I would say. What is that thing? Lonely Planet. Yes, that's what it's called, isn't it? So they invited a YouTuber to actually do some short videos in every country, and then it was quite funny because she's a funny YouTuber. So she went to Singapore, and then she's like, "Oh, everything is banned. No durian on the trains." I'm not sure if you know what durian is.
No.
It's like a fruit.
It's a nasty fruit.
It's not nasty. How dare you? Yes.
What is it, like a watermelon or something?
No, so it's a
I'm
thorny.
picturing
It's
watermelon.
thorny. Yes.
Okay, so it has like pricks on it and stuff?
Yes, if it falls on someone could die actually.
Oh, wow.
But the inside is creamy yellow kind of color. It has a pungent smell in quotation marks because to me it's not pungent. It's amazing. It smells like heaven. But
that's the difference in views right there. You called it nasty, you told it smells like heaven.
Right.
Are we talking about the same thing?
Yes, we are. So it's not allowed on the trains just because of the smell. And a lot, like she was showing some signs, for instance, no skateboarding at certain places, no playing of soccer in certain apartment blocks. I don't know. There's just no signs everywhere. Yes. Yeah.
No,
Tell me, go ahead, Hazim.
No, there's a sign also. No.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like they come, although they might be tedious reasons, but I feel like, there's a specific reason as to why each thing is banned, and the people who created these laws in one way or the other probably thought that it was in the best interest of the country's well-being to, now I completely understand why gum is banned. Does make sense, especially considering that the country is so small, and you said they even went down to actually calculating how much it would possibly cost to clean up these things, so they probably thought it would just be a better idea to have it banned. Doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
But
recently they changed it though. I mean,
where it's not banned anymore.
They're allowing prescription gum.
Oh,
So now, like, no recreation gum, just prescription ones.
wow, that's interesting. Before we wrap this up, I want you to tell me, like, what are some things that you see back home in Singapore that you would love to see implemented over here in the United States?
That's a very difficult question because honestly, I would like to see a lot of stuff here in the United States as well implemented back home, right?
Okay, and vice versa. Then you can answer that question for me as well.
Right. Because I feel like one thing that's lacking in Singapore's education system, which I didn't mention earlier, is actually having students develop their critical thinking, right? Because in general, a lot of sorts of speeches are banned and clamped on, so people don't really have courage to actually speak up. And that translates to the education system as well. Kids just sort of, when they think of something, they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this out because, people might think that I'm wrong, that sort of thing.
Which discourages you from critical thinking.
Yeah, so when I started studying here, I was surprised at how people just say everything they wanted to, even though sometimes it's useless stuff, Yeah, so it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but to me, it errs more on the good side because you could hear more opinions and viewpoints, and you learn from them as well. Yeah, I think when I was in university as well, there was sometimes when I couldn't finish the readings, and I was just like, okay, I'll just learn from my classmates because they have done the readings and they'll speak up in class, but I wouldn't be able to do so in Singapore.
We never do the readings over here.
But they did do it though. At Brandeis, I'm not sure.
Private university, of course.
Yeah, but anyways, I think aside from that, I feel like America. Okay, the gun thing was weird though. Like what? people
like
having
the gun laws, you mean?
Yeah, it's weird to me.
How are gun laws over there? Is it non-existent?
No guns, just no guns.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so
no-
you feel like that's something that you would hope to see implemented here in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, like, it would significantly reduce deaths, no? I mean, they have some ideological beliefs about this, and I understand that it has a complex history and how people defended themselves from the federal government, etc., etc. But it just doesn't make sense now anymore, does it? Yeah. So, yeah. So I think the other thing that's more, I mean, less political is actually how you guys do financial transactions here. It's so weird. I mean, you guys have like you can't transfer from bank to bank like money, right? So you guys always
can.
use Venmo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not as easy because in Singapore, we're just like, oh, I'll transfer you money from my bank using my phone. Yeah, so it's direct. Just press something, they will just receive it.
I feel like we kind of have that.
I think it depends on the amount. Like maybe if it's
Yeah.
like 2K or something,
Yeah.
you know, you can't really just.
Yeah, anything over $2,000 you can't instantly send from one
Yeah.
bank to another.
We can do that. Like, it's secure. Yes.
Well, we have the IRS.
Yeah, they'll tax
They,
that.
they want to know.
The cash apps. And
Yeah, Cash App. They want you to report anything over
Right,
$600 on any of these platforms that we just mentioned: Cash App,
Yeah.
Zelle, Venmo. But before we wrap it up, I'd love to mention how appreciative I am of having you on the show.
Thank you.
I've definitely learned a lot throughout it. You are leaving tomorrow, and I know your time is very valuable. So for you to be able to take some time out on the vacation means a lot to me, and I really appreciate you coming out. Hazim, special shout out to you. You made this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we wrap this up, I wanted to hear a little bit about what some of your plans and your visions for the future are. Let's start with you, Hazim.
Basically, I'm just doing this a master's program.
Okay.
So after graduating from that, after finishing that, I want to do something that uses both my degrees, the accounting and
Human
resources. Maybe something in benefits, something in payroll, maybe for now, and eventually, maybe in 5 years, I would start my own thing.
Nice. Start your own company.
Maybe a company.
Do you plan on remaining over here in the United States, or do you have plans of maybe living life elsewhere?
No, I think it's over here, but maybe not in Michigan. So it really depends where the
Don't leave us, dude.
opportunity is. Don't worry, I won't leave you. I'll take you with me. Yeah.
That sounds good. Ashraf, tell me a little bit about your plans and your vision for the future.
Right. So, I mean, because I'm a social worker now, and honestly, it's an exhausting job. And because of college, I sort of am leaning more and more towards sort of writing for a living, writing and teaching. So it's academia, right? So because right now I'm doing an online master's in population and health sciences, and it sort of equips me with the statistical knowledge of how to handle big data and stuff like that. I think that would be useful because I would want to go to something along the lines of sociology of medicine or sociology of health and AIDS, stuff like that, that actually requires you to handle a lot of data, and also it requires you to write a lot and teach a lot as well. So yeah, so that's my plan basically. And I mean, having said that, perhaps it's more likely to be in the US because I think sociology is a field that is more developed here than back home in Singapore. I mean, we have Berkeley, Michigan, even Brandeis that has actually extensive scholarship on these issues so that I could learn from and also pursue more
Over here rather than
within the
elsewhere.
field. Exactly.
Well, guys, any last-minute closing words you guys would like to fill the viewers in with, please take this as an opportunity to do so. Hazim, do you have any words for the viewers before we get
Not
going?
really. Just follow Abdullah.
You're the man.
This episode blows up, you know.
It definitely has a potential to. Honestly, this was very interesting episode to me. Ashraf, I really appreciate you allowing us to see things through your light, opening up to us a little bit about, you know, what your life is like. Like I said, I'm very appreciative of having you on, and it's been an honor for sure. Hazim, thank you so much for getting on. I appreciate the both of you very much. Ashraf, do you have any last second words for the viewers? Please take advantage.
Yes, thank you, Abdullah, for this
My pleasure.
opportunity to speak. But also, I think I'm just hoping that this will end very soon so that we could have more people from abroad and your show and just more exchanges of ideas in general, which is good for anyone.
And this is one of the main reasons why I loved this episode. It was definitely an exchange of ideas, and it's a totally new perspective. You know, to have somebody from abroad who was, you know, born and raised in a totally different country, the United States and the Middle East as well. I love these kind of episodes, honestly. And this was one of the concepts that I wanted to implement from the very beginning of this podcast, was that it would be extremely inclusive and that it would draw ideas and opinions from all walks of life. You know, I'm not looking for this podcast to be exclusive to just Arabic people, Yemenis, Muslims. I'm trying to make it extremely inclusive. So to have somebody like you who is from a totally different country and not only not from America but also not from the Middle East has been eye-opening. I enjoyed it very much, and once again, I just love to thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hazim, thank you for making it happen, dude. We're signing out. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in a week or two. You know how my schedule goes. Sometimes I'll upload once a week. Sometimes it's once every other week. So gotta be patient with me. Thank you guys for watching. Been a pleasure having Ashraf and Hazim. We'll see you guys next time.